While trap music had boomed in Atlanta through the noughties, with people like Young Jeezy having close affiliations to the BMF drug empire, and in the 2010s when the Migos took over, showing off some very low-key ties to the Gangsta Disciples. While the Gangsta Disciples had intended to stay low-key themselves and quell the violence in their city to focus on business, they would ultimately fall into temptation when they felt other out-of-towners were disrespecting their gang's heritage and history. Looking for a way to make some noise in the streets, OGKK got an idea while listening to the Rick Ross song BMF, which stands for Blowing Money Fast, as well as being a tribute to the Atlanta-based drug dealing operation. In particular, in the opening lines of the song, Rick Ross says, "I think I'm Big Meech, Larry Hoover, whipping work, hallelujah." And as you know from earlier in the video, Larry Hoover was the founder of the Gangsta Disciples, and Big Meech is the notorious leader of the Atlanta drug runners, the BMF. Now, Rick Ross likely thought that he was paying homage to these street legends through his music, but the problem with Rick Ross is that his street credentials have always been in question. His past time working as a correctional officer had made many believe that he was in fact a fake gangster. And while to Rose's credit, in his brilliant autobiography Hurricanes, he explains how he took the job as a CEO in an effort to lay low after the Miami-based drug cartel he was a part of was swept by the cops. But regardless of the intention, OGKK would apparently feel a way about this casual reference to the founder of his gang, but would initially give Rick Ross a pass.
This G's coming from all over talking about this right here. Hey Rick, straight up, you know what you did first time we gave you a pass on the Larry Hoover Big Meech song.
Rick Ross would have gotten away with this accidental disrespect, but that was until Rick Ross announced his MMG tour with artists Meek Mill, Wale, and French Montana, as well as the artwork for his latest mixtape, The Black Bar Mitzvah, in which the album art depicts his head in the front of the Star of David, a symbol which has a deep-rooted history in a bunch of different cultures, religions, and ideologies, but specifically the Gangsta Disciples. OGKK, who didn't take a liking to Rick Ross's album cover, would then take to YouTube to send a stern warning to Rick Ross in a video that went viral in the rap community, titled Rick Ross in Trouble with the GDs in Georgia, this video being an on-camera rebuke aimed at Rick Ross from the Georgia GDs.
That's what you right there. It ain't nothing but 3 people that rock this star: the Jews, GDs, Illuminati. GD folk! GD folk! You're not Jew, you're not GD, so I guess the Illuminati got you. Disciple! Disciple!
And in the video, he would even say that all of Rick Ross's artists on his MMG label were in trouble as well.
We pulling up on you, we pressing up on you, the whole Maybach. Music. Don't matter who in music. Everybody on your label is in trouble. GD folk! GD folk!
They were letting it be known that the GDs were indeed on Rick Ross's tail and that pressure wouldn't stop until a check was cut, basically saying that they were not going to stop harassing him until they got the money they wanted.
Meek Mills, everybody, G, nothing personal, but tell your boss man he got to get that check, boy, because y'all in trouble. GD folk! GD folk!
And they would even end the video with all the GDs screaming an F Rick Ross chant.
Rick Ross! Rick Ross! Rick Ross! Rick Ross! Rick Ross! Rick Ross! Rick Ross!
A few weeks later, on November the 9th, 2012, the Florida GDs would come out with a video of their own, letting Rick Ross know that they need their cash.
You see it, boss? You know what I'm saying? Rick Ross. You know what I mean? We need that cash. We need that cash now. We need that cash right now.
Also saying that as a man, you have to honor your obligations, and that Rick Ross hasn't done so.
As a man, you're supposed to honor your obligations, and therefore you gon' do so. Until you do, you gon' have to deal with the mob.
And 9 days after that, on November the 18th, 2012, a group of North Carolina GDs would put out a video with the exact same sentiment as the video from the Georgia and Florida GDs. Things had gotten critical for Rick Ross, and now he was getting pressed by Gangsta Disciples all over America, furious that he was misusing the iconography of their gang for his personal gains. Then, a few weeks after this video, it would be announced that Rick Ross had actually cancelled 2 shows of his tour that were in North Carolina, and the next day, he would actually cancel the rest of his tour. At this point, all of the media outlets were saying that Ross cancelled his tour because of the recent gang threats coming his way, but in a December 2012 interview, Ross would actually go on record to say that he did not cancel the initial North Carolina dates, and that actually the promoter did, claiming that he would then cancel the rest of the tour due to this quote-unquote bad business.
So the other day I woke up and realized 2 more dates had been canceled, so I just felt like there was some power that I needed to take away from homie, so I canceled the rest of the dates.
Also letting it be known that no check is getting cut to the gangsters trying to intimidate him.
So if you screaming cut a check, we need a check, ain't no checks getting cut. Ain't never no checks getting cut. I don't play those games.
About 5 weeks after this interview, on January the 27th, 2013, Rick Ross would be in Miami, specifically at Club Live, to celebrate his 37th birthday, and he was even photoed partying with Diddy, so you know he had a wild night. Then, early on January the 28th, 2013, after a night of partying, Rick Ross would get hungry. So he and and his girlfriend at the time, Shantaria El Morang El, would go on to the Floridian restaurant on Los Olas Boulevard. He would then leave the diner at around 5 a.m, hopping in his Rolls Royce. Ross would drive off, and that's when a still unknown man would shoot up his car, hitting it close to 24 times. Ross reportedly tried to flee the shooting, but ended up crashing his car into an apartment building near 15th Avenue and Las Olas Boulevard. Nobody was injured in the shooting and subsequent crash, but a number of businesses in the area were damaged by stray bullets. Now, apparently, Rick Ross wouldn't cooperate with the detectives, so they would never find out who did the shooting, but due to how close this was to the warning videos and cancelled tour, media outlets would start linking the shooting to the GDs. This was ultimately a close call for Rick Ross, but as far as I'm aware, nobody was ever caught for this incident, and despite the speculation that the GDs were not necessarily implicated in the shooting, it's an eyebrow-raising coincidence that really begs the question, did insulting the Atlanta GDs nearly cost Rick Ross his life? We might never know, but this was yet another chapter of violence that was connected to the Atlanta GDs that ultimately proved that staying out the way and focusing on business wasn't that simple. And sadly, as time went on, there would be yet more feuds involving the Atlanta GDs, and soon they would even end up embroiled in another beef with another set of gangsters that had migrated from another American city. Interestingly, OGKK's tough stance on Rick Ross disrespecting the GDs had gained him a lot of attention and respect in the streets and on the internet. Riding high off just going viral, OGKK wanted to shoot a music video, and he would decide on February the 16th, 2013 to take Shawntae Craig, Donald Glass, and a bunch of GDs to shoot this video in one of the most dangerous neighborhoods in Atlanta, The Bluff. If you watch my video on Rallo, the rapper/drug dealing phenom, you would know that The Bluff is known to be a drug-infested part of Atlanta with a very high crime rate, with the name of The Bluff literally standing for better leave, you effing fool. A part of these GDs that would go to The Bluff was a man named Lewis Mobley, who was an enforcer and part of the hate committee. While filming the video, 17-year-old Jermaine Higgins, who was rocking a red jacket, would spot the GDs. He would then walk in front of the camera and taunt these gang members, apparently saying the word black to the GDs, which means blood love all the time, signifying his gang ties to the Bloods. Feeling disrespected, Mobley would then follow Higgins into a store to talk with him and subsequently shoot him. Higgins survived the shooting and was taken to Grady Memorial Hospital, but then 2 days later on February the 8th, 2013, investigator Pierre Joseph would visit Grady Memorial Hospital, where Higgins told him that the person who shot him was wearing a GD jacket. On February the 20th, 2013, investigator Joseph would return to Grady Memorial Hospital, this time with an array of photos, and he would ask Higgins to identify his shooter, which he would identify Lewis Mobley as the shooter. On February the 22nd, 2013, police were conducting surveillance on Mobley's apartment, which they would then see him exit with his 8-year-old daughter and enter a minivan. Police would follow the vehicle, eventually attempting to pull them over on the I-20 expressway. The vehicle looked like it was going to stop, but then sped off, taking the police on a high-speed chase down the expressway. Police ultimately were able to make the car spin out and prevent it from driving, and Mobley was then arrested, eventually getting a whopping 40 years in prison for his involvement in that shooting. But sadly, it wouldn't be the only one. Although they were the one who shot Jermaine, OGKK, Smurf, and the rest of the hate committee were obviously upset that a blood gang member just snitched on a GD, leading to his arrest. About a year would go by, and then James Hightower decided to send a message. Hightower would hit up Anthony Bowers, a local dealer from the area, who happened to be a blood, arranging to meet him and buy some dope. Anthony and his friend Demetrius Hosby, along with Demetrius's girlfriend Maisha Brown, with him. They were just hanging out and figured they would catch a ride home from Anthony after he finished the sale. Anthony would drive towards the Discount Mall in Fulton County and then back into the driveway of an abandoned house behind the shopping center. Maisha was in the passenger seat and Demetrius was in the back laying down with his head behind the passenger seat. That's when James Hightower would approach the car from the street, heading towards the driver's side window, which wasn't working. Anthony would lower the back window and hand a bag of drugs out to James. James would reach in his pocket and hesitate. Demetrius was looking directly at James when he would see a gun and warn Anthony. He started to drive away, but James would begin to shoot, with 4 bullets hitting Anthony in the head, torso, and shoulder, causing him to die instantly. Demetrius was hit as well, and he would black out, and when he would gain consciousness, the car was rolling out of the driveway across the street because Anthony's foot was still stuck on the gas pedal. The car would crash into a ditch, and the bullets would stop. Maisha saw James walking towards the car, and Demetrius told her to play dead. James would fire 4 more shots into the vehicle. One of the bullets hit Demetrius, paralyzing him from the waist down, but luckily, Maisha wasn't hit and able to call 911. She would give a description of the shooter, saying he was a black man who was wearing a black hoodie and jeans. An officer had seen a man matching that description walking down a nearby road just before arriving at the crime scene. The officer would then go out looking for the man he just saw, and he would find James, who at the time was wearing a black hood and jeans. When the officer began to frisk James, he ran away, and the officer would chase him through an apartment complex. The officer would then find him lying on the ground and arrest him. Police would find his phone and a 9mm gun in the woods right near where James was arrested. Officers would then show Maisha a photo of James, to which she confirmed he was wearing the same clothes as the man that shot at her, Demetrius, and Anthony. Although later, she was not able to identify James in a 6-photo lineup. Demetrius Demetrius was hospitalized for his injuries, and a few weeks after the shooting, a detective interviewed him for the first time, and he was able to identify James as the shooter in a 6-photo lineup. James Hightower was later sentenced to life plus 45 years for the murder of Anthony Bowers and attempted murder of Maisha Brown and Demetrius Cosby. Obviously not happy about the situation, the Bloods from Atlanta would retaliate, killing James Hightower's son in retaliation for what he did to Anthony Bowers. This would prompt leaders of the GDs to give a green light for all Blood gang members in the Atlanta area. Things were spiraling out of control for the Atlanta GDs. Now, the original intentions of being a peaceful, business-minded organization were long gone, and they were waging war with various opponents all over the city. But interestingly, after sparking a deadly feud with the Bloods in the city, they would soon also begin another war with the original mortal enemy of the Bloods in Los Angeles, the Crips. On the night of November the 30th, 2014, GDs from all over the state were in Atlanta celebrating the GD founder Larry Hoover's birthday at the Deja Vu Sports Bar and Lounge, which was in Crip territory and likely frequented by them. While at the bar, an altercation would ensue. This exchange would erupt and spill into the parking lot, where gunfire erupted and 2 security guards were shot. Now, the court documents don't actually say who the GDs got into an altercation with, but I think it's safe to assume that it was the Crips, because in the following weeks, one of the most heinous crimes in this story would take place, with a couple of GDs going to hunt down some Crips and killing innocent civilians in the process. A couple days after this shooting, on December the 2nd, 2014, OGKK would release a video on YouTube saying if anybody messes with Offset from the Migos, they're also messing with him.
Anybody who got a problem with my little brother Offset, man, like I say, bro, you got a problem with me.
In that same video, he would also shout out Takeoff and Quavo.
Shout out to Quavo, shout out to Takeoff, now y'all tweet that.
As well as warning Chief Keef about dropping the rakes, which is a hand symbol that disrespects the GDs.
You know what I'm saying? Chief Keef, all that over with, man. All that over with, man. Drop another rake and watch what happened to you, bro. Believe that, Chief. Believe that, Chief. Believe that, Chief. You know what I mean?
Clearly, the Atlanta GDs were trying to apply pressure to anyone disrespecting them anywhere in America. But back home in their city of Atlanta, they were about to take things to a violent new level, carrying out a shooting that would rock the city to its core. Less than 2 weeks after the incident at the Deja Vu Sports Bar and Grill, a few GDs from Macon, Georgia would come up with a plan to get back on their new Crip rivals. The GDs we're talking about specifically are Virtuous Wall, aka Vert, and Derek Taylor, aka D, and Marquez Patterson, aka MP, as well as Jaquez Foster. On December the 12th, 2014, according to surveillance footage, the group of GDs would show up to the Wings Cafe at 1:54 AM and immediately spot a group of Crips. You then see 2 GDs throw something at the Crips. Then you see a security guard trying his best to calm the situation down. That's when Vert would punch one of the Crips in the face, leading to the security guard spraying like bear spray, but could be mace at both gangs. After that, a Crip member would throw a bottle towards Vert.
In the video, you see 2 people shooting. One of them could be Marquez Patterson and the other Kenyatta Norris Lester. Kenyatta was sentenced for fatally shooting 38-year-old Derek Jackson at Macon's Wings Cafe, a Bloomfield Drive nightclub.
And Marquez Patterson initially killing 25-year-old Corey Hollingshed and 34-year-old George Henley, who was just the DJ at the Wings Cafe trying to make an honest living that night. And then sadly, almost a week later on December the 18th, 2014, a third man would die due to a gunshot that he sustained at the Wings Cafe that night. That man was 38-year-old Derek Jackson. The day after the shooting on December the 13th, 2014, Vert would have Derek Taylor call into the police department to report his gun being stolen before the Wings Cafe shooting that had happened the day before. Ultimately, their plan didn't work, as all of the men involved were arrested and charged for these killings. None of the men actually took it to trial, and all 4 ended up pleading guilty to their crimes, with Vert, Jaquez Foster, and Marquez Patterson all getting 30 years in prison, and Derek Taylor getting 12 years, which, to be honest, are rather light sentences for a triple homicide, with these sentences likely being the result of the plea deal that these men took. But ultimately, the city was showing the Atlanta GDs that they couldn't intimidate their ops in peace. But these arrests did very little to stop the carnage going on the streets of Atlanta, and soon the gangsters there would take the war to a whole new level, embarking on yet another violent back and forth with rival gangs that once again would devolve into an all-out killing spree.